Hey, everybody, welcome to the Live Your Purpose podcast, where we want to inspire you every single day to live not only your purpose, but to live on purpose. And today's episode is going to be a bit of a unique format. We actually just had a panel of mental health experts at Meadows Church a handful of weeks ago, answering some really important questions about not only how can we live our purpose by doing, but by taking care of ourselves mentally. Every single one of us, we are on the grind, right? Especially if you're living out your purpose or if you're trying to live out your purpose, man, you want to be locked in. You want to be dialed in. You want to be doing. And I totally get that. But at times, man, we maybe go overboard a little bit with the doing and we forget to take care of ourselves mentally. And that's just as important, if not the most important thing that we can do to take care of ourselves, is to acknowledge what we need to stay healthy and be healthy mentally. So living out our purpose is not just about what we do. It's about how we protect and care for our mind while doing it. So I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation and for you to maybe take something away that you can directly apply to your life today and going forward.
Church, I'm so excited to be up here with you today and with a couple of guests that you've maybe never heard from before, but I'm going to introduce them in just a second. But first, I want to introduce myself. My name is Sayer. I'm the worship pastor here at Meadows Church. I get up here every now and again to speak and things like that, and I love getting to do that. But today, we're going to give an opportunity, as we've been in a series called Hope for Mental Health. We're going to hear from some people who are professionals in this industry, some people who can speak into things in a way that I can't, that Pastor Monty can't. They have a unique expertise in this area. And Proverbs 15, verse 22 says, "Plans go wrong for lack of advice, but many advisors bring success." How true is that? Amen? Amen. So we're going to hear from some amazing people. This is Joe and Heidi. Can we give it up for Joe and Heidi today? I'm going to defer to you guys. Give us the rundown. Who are you? What do you do? Tell us about your family. Tell us about yourselves. Introduce yourselves to the congregation today.
Ladies first.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Heidi, and I started out in Iowa in a very small town, and then I moved to Omaha about 18 years ago. I've always been in the helping profession. I did 20 years in healthcare. And then when that became too taxing, I decided I still wanted to help people, but I didn't know how. I wanted it to be in a different capacity. And so I went into mental health because I saw a lot of people struggling around me, and I knew that I had the gift for that. And so that's how I ended up here.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Well, hi, guys. My name's Joe, and I'm also a licensed therapist. I'm an Omaha kid. Unlike Heidi, I'm not from Iowa. I'm from here, right in here in Omaha. And I just love being a part of this church. My wife and I have been here for about 3 years, off and on. We've been married for 11, and you might not know me, but you probably have seen my little toddler running between your legs, and I'm sorry for that. If he's tripped you by now, just please know you can just say, "Hey, True, get out of the way," and that's going to be just fine. I actually come to professional counseling from a background in ministry. So I worked as a pastor for about 15 years in a couple of different churches in the Omaha area, as well as a few different nonprofits. And what I kind of learned in ministry was people are hurting, so that's common sense. And I had a deep passion to work with those people and help those people, but I felt incredibly ill-equipped to do so. That's really what inspired me to move into a career in professional counseling. You might be in that same boat, and today what I'd ask you is just to think to yourself, do I really enjoy those deep conversations when life matters a lot? Maybe that's you, and today we're going to talk about ways that you can engage with people on a deeper level if you feel that passion as well. So grateful to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, there we go. So what would you both say is one thing? I think that every single one of us can apply something. I mean, no matter if we feel like it's a drastic issue or we feel like it's maybe something minor, what's one thing that you feel like everyone in the room today could do to improve their mental health?
So for me, I know that when I'm struggling, I need some music, and I need to maybe dance it out or yell it out, right? But put my body in motion is really helpful. And then, so the music may be pumped up, and then I need to do my breathing, and I'm grounding. I'm checking, how does my body feel in my clothes? starting with my toes and working my way up to my head, and then feeling something soft, right? So we're tapping into our 5 senses and we're grounding out in the moment, because when our head's all the way out here, it's hard to get back in here. And our body is telling us exactly what we need. Do we need to take a nap? Do we need to go vent to a friend? Do we need to eat something? Do we need to take a shower? But if we tune into our body, it'll tell us exactly what we need to do. So that's one thing I would do.
Absolutely. And I think, Heidi, what you're describing is what we would just call self-care. And for a lot of people, they think self-care is selfish. And I would argue it's not. As a matter of fact, it's more others-centered to take care of yourself so that you're more capable of helping other people around you. So if you feel like taking care of yourself is selfish, I would just challenge you today, no, I think it's actually stewardship so you can help people at a greater level. That's what you're describing.
Right. And so one of the things that we teach is not to be it's not selfish, you're being self-full. Right?
Self-full.
Self-full.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
If you're taking notes, self-full. There we go.
If you're
Are we
writing
done
things
now?
down, write this down. If you're not writing things down, write it down. Yeah, that's
it
my
is.
shtick. That's my thing.
Yeah, that's your thing. If you're not writing it down, start writing it down. I wanted to give you a real quick emotional self-care exercise that you could do today. So if you take nothing home with you, maybe just do this one thing for the next week. So it's called the VCR exercise. If you're under 30, you don't know what that means. If you're over 30, you would understand. But VCR doesn't stand for the words that we would normally say. It stands for validate, comfort, and recover. So we want to do emotionally on a daily basis. We want to validate how we're feeling. And we can do that in 3 really easy baby steps. Any What About Bob people in the room? Just a little baby step here. Baby step number 1, identify how you're really feeling. Baby step number 2, explain to yourself, why do I feel the way that I feel? And then baby step number 3, evaluate it. And we ask this very important question, is it reasonable to feel this way? Not right or wrong, because emotions don't have a moral compass. They're not right or wrong. They're just reasonable or unreasonable. So when we're trying to validate ourselves, identify, explain, and then evaluate it. Give yourself some freedom and grace to say, you know what, this is reasonable. We can comfort, we identify a need in order to soothe the feeling. So we get to the comfort step and we ask ourselves, what do I need right now to deal with this feeling? And that's the big question. And you can think of anything and everything, like Heidi was talking about. Maybe I just need to listen to some music. I need to go to the gym. I need to go get some alone time. What do I need right now to deal with this feeling? And then finally, the recover step is just simply the experiment. We've got our hypothesis, our comfort step. We've identified what the need is, and we're just going to play it out in a little experiment. If it doesn't work, we're not going to get mad at ourselves, because experiments can fail, and that's okay. We would just go back to the comfort step, and we would think to ourselves, what else do I need today in order to deal with this feeling? I'll try a new experiment. So VCR could be something that you could do this afternoon as an immediate takeaway for your mental health.
So I like the fact that you brought up emotions in that, right? And so emotions play a crucial role in our lives, right? And the thing with emotions is that they call us to action, right? We get this strong sense in our body, and then we react, right, with a behavior. Either we're yelling at that person that's yelling at us, or maybe we need to turn and walk away, or maybe we isolate, or maybe we go sleep, right? But it's paying attention and identifying what that emotion is, because that emotion is telling us, it's a signal, something's going on, I need to pay attention to this, and it calls us to action.
How would you say somebody would know that they would need professional counseling? Maybe they go through these steps and they're still struggling with it. How would you say, what would be the signs, I suppose, to know that you need professional counseling?
So one of the first things I would say about discerning whether or not you need professional counseling is trying to understand what stage you're at in response to maybe a crisis or an upsetting situation. For a lot of people, we respond to things in a normative way. The fancy term is called eustress, where we respond to things in a eustress way. If your grandma dies, it's sad. And it's normative to feel sad. We would say it's congruent to feel sad, and that'd be okay. For many of us, we tend to also respond to things in an excessive way, a little bit beyond what would be normal, and we would call that distressed. If you feel distressed about what's going on in your life, that might be a good indicator that you might want to be looking for some counseling. Another step beyond that is what we would call dysfunctional, and dysfunctional simply means if we're dealing with an event in our lives or something that's been going on for a long time and we literally can't function day to day because of that, that's also a very strong indicator for counseling. You would identify these 3 different tiers in what's called psychological first aid, or PFA. And here's a fun little plug. We're actually doing a PFA course called Spiritual First Aid coming up in a week. So you're going to learn how to triage and how to work through these different levels of discerning what type of care you need or what type of care a friend or a family member needs by going through that course and learning some psychological first aid stuff.
Well, that pretty much covered it all, huh? So more just expanding on what Joe was talking about is if it's difficult to make it to work, whether it's mental health or substance use. If you're having disagreements within a significant relationship, or maybe it's the parent-child relationship, and you've went and you vented to people, and maybe you've talked to your life group about it, and maybe your purpose group, and it's still not getting better, then I would definitely reach out for professional help.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm going to contradict myself, and I hate doing that on stage, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm also going to recommend that you guys think about coming to counseling as a preventative measure. You know what? There is no better time to improve parts of your life, to make things better than ever, than when they're already going well. Especially if it's a relationship conflict. Maybe you want to come in for some family counseling. Last year I was working with a family that life was good, and they had 2 teenage kids, and mom and dad were just trying to figure out how to keep everything afloat, and they were trying to do life together but also be themselves, and they just wanted more communication skills in order to talk about that. But life was already good, so when we came in to talk, they weren't fighting with each other, they were collaborating, and that might be the best time to create changes that makes life better than ever. So you may be in a season where life is good and you want some preventative care. Why wouldn't you go to a doctor on an annual basis? Well, to just prevent anything from going on that may be worse. So maybe preventative care could also be a reason to come to professional counseling.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. On the other end of that spectrum, too, I mean, being in a hopeless situation, wondering, will it ever get better? You know, is this just what it is now? What do you say to those people who feel like they're maybe in hopeless situations?
So what I'm hearing you say is, what if I've tried everything I can, nothing seems to get better, what the heck am I supposed to do now? Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I think the first thing I would say, and Heidi's going to add to this, and she's got incredible insight on this, but one of the first things I would say is that the human body doesn't get fixed. We're not a car. We don't go to a mechanic and replace a part. The human body heals. And our mind is the same way. If you're dealing with something and you've been dealing with it for years and you feel like you're a hamster on a hamster wheel and you just can't go anywhere, I mean, it's very possible that you're trying to fix something that has never been given the opportunity to heal. And that might be a very different approach. You know, when we break a bone, the first thing we actually have to do is we have to set it and then protect it so it doesn't get touched. If you've broken something from a cognitive, emotional, psychological aspect of your life, have you ever given yourself the space to set it aside and not touch it so that it doesn't get further damaged? That's really hard to do. It's possible that we may be healing instead of fixing. And if we're trying to fix something that needs to be healed, we may not see a lot of progress. So that'd be the first thing I would say in response to that if you're in that situation.
Yeah, so the healing process, right? That I love the body and the scientific stuff that goes behind this, right? Is that the more that we are able to heal from those past relationships, past traumas, past substances, right? Our body can regenerate, it can heal itself. We can make new neural pathways with the help, with professional help, right? So I love the body and how much it can change just based on what we're putting into it, right? What conversations are we having? What music are we listening to? What are the things that we're reading? What TV shows are we watching, right? All of that impacts our body on a cellular level, right? And so if we've had hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and it's impacted that, we can still heal from that. There's hope. It doesn't have to stay that way.
No, that's really good. I wanted to add something from a spiritual component too, real quickly. This is going to be hard. It's going to be hard for me to say. It might be hard for you guys to hear. But when you're trying to improve something in your life, you might have to ask yourself, what is my goal? And for a lot of Christians, that's a really tough question because sometimes our goal isn't necessarily God's goal. And sometimes we find ourselves in conflict with what God is actually trying to do in us. I think a lot of Christians, we use Romans 8:28 as our Hobby Lobby verse, right? God's working all things together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And we just remind ourselves, God loves me. He's working things together for good. It's going to work out. But a lot of us don't really finish the passage. Verse 29 describes what the good is. And the good is to be conformed to the image of Christ. Oftentimes we look at good from our viewpoint, but we don't really take the time to think about good from God's perspective. Maybe God has something in your life right now that's supposed to be hard and not supposed to necessarily get better anytime soon because it's making you look more like Jesus. And maybe today what we have to do is agree with God's terms more than push our own terms.
Yeah, so good, excellent. To follow up with that, David, and God gave David the plans for the temple, right? It's all mapped out, all the dimensions, how many dishes, how many plates, all this and that, right? But David wasn't meant to build the temple. So how many times do we feel like we're meant to do something just because we have the knowledge to, but that isn't God's plan for us? So checking in to make sure that so when we're feeling stressed and we're overwhelmed and we're anxious and we're depressed, are we operating outside of what Jesus is and God's purpose is for us?
That's really good stuff. I think something that stood out that you said too is the fixing versus the healing. You know, fixing implies instant solution. Healing process, like you said, it takes time, and that's sometimes difficult to grapple with, right? Sensitive, very present topic, I suppose, is obviously suicide, you know, and when it comes to suicide, you know, what do we need to know for our own sake, for our kids, for our friends, for our family? What do you say we need to know regarding that subject in particular?
So I want to talk to some statistics first, and Heidi's going to dive into some warning signs second. I think for our sake and for our kids' sake, for our loved ones' sake, one of the first things we need to acknowledge is that suicide is a lot more prevalent than we might like to admit. Suicide on a low tier, and a low tier of suicidality is a wish for death. It would be something like, I just wish I wasn't here anymore. Or maybe the thought goes through your mind, would anybody miss me if I was gone? I mean, that's almost a universal thought. I know I've thought of that many times. Almost every single client I've ever had has said they have thought about that specific type of thing at least once in their life. So there's almost this universality that all of us at some time in our lives have wished that we weren't around. Taking it a step further, the CDC just came out with a study 2 years ago in 2023. It's the most recent data that we have. They found that 12 million Americans seriously think about suicide, which is several tiers beyond just that first one I mentioned. They seriously think about suicide every single year. I want to give you some context of what that would feel like, because that's 3.5% of our population. So at a church like Meadows, at our size, that would mean that on a typical Sunday, statistically, about 20 of us are seriously thinking about suicide every single Sunday when we come in through these doors. When you really think about it, that's incredibly prevalent. So if you are in that category, you are not alone. If your kids are in that category, they are not alone, and you are not alone as their parent. If you have a friend or a family member who's in that category, you are not alone in trying to confront and support and encourage that friend. This is a prevalent thing that affects all of us. So that's one thing I want to speak to. What were you thinking about warning signs to look out for?
Yeah, so some warning signs may look like people that don't return phone calls anymore. They're not responding to text message, so it could look like some isolation. To get a little bit deeper, they could start selling off their belongings. They could talk about, oh, I want to see so-and-so one last time. Those are a lot of the warning signs. And something else that Joe shared was that every 11 minutes, somebody attempts suicide. And so even within us sitting here, there's been at least, I don't know, a lot. So it's serious, it's real, and if you can get them support, great. If not, offer information.
Yeah, and if you are going to have that tough conversation, I want to reassure you real quick. Asking someone, are they suicidal, does not make them more suicidal. All the research in the world validates that. Asking someone directly, are you suicidal? Are you having thoughts of hurting yourself or someone else, does not make them more suicidal in that moment. And if they say yes, wow, that's an opportunity to invite them into hope, maybe for the first time. You know, I love Psalm 34:18 because it reminds us that the Lord is near the brokenhearted. If you want to find God, find broken people. So if you've been invited into that moment with something, that is an honor. That is something not to run away from, but to run towards. And if you feel overwhelmed, my encouragement to you is after that question, say, okay, can we call someone together? And you call 988, that's the National Suicide Hotline. It's a network of dozens of hotlines across the country, and you guys have a conversation with a crisis counselor together. That could be a really great first and second step if you're finding someone who falls in that very prevalent category.
So given those statistics, right, even more reason to take that spiritual first aid, giving the number of people around us that could be hurting.
What if you do perceive that in somebody that you know, somebody that you love? How do you encourage them to get the help that they need to seek out counseling?
It's just having open conversation. Say, hey, I noticed you haven't been showing up to choir practice. Or, hey, I reached out to you, I called you. Is something going on with you? I'm here for you. I want to support you. You're not in this alone. And hope is still there.
Yeah, I think exactly what Heidi said. Loving someone through truth. Ephesians 4:15 tells us to be speaking the truth in love, and that's how we grow and mature to become like Christ. If you really love someone, you can love them enough to speak truth to their life. I think that's very good. I think there was a broader question that was up on the screen I just saw, which is how do I convince someone to go to counseling? Is that also true, Sarah?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And that can be a little bit broader than just someone who you're worried about from a suicidal standpoint. If you are trying to figure out, should I get someone to go to counseling and how do I convince them? I would encourage you to take a step back and think about your motivation for why you want to confront them real quick. And I call this the you, me, we dilemma. So there's always 3 different components associated with a relationship conflict or some sort of relational tension. There's always going to be the you, which is the other person. There's always going to be the me, which is obviously yourself or myself. And there's always going to be the we, which is our relationship. Oftentimes, if we want to convince someone to go to counseling, it usually falls into one of these 3 motivations. Now, I'll be honest, if it's for my sake that I want someone to go to counseling, maybe I'm a parent and I've got a teenager who's just really obstinate and I can't seem to get a handle on anything, and they're like making life at home very difficult and it's just very hard. And for my sake, my own sanity, I want them to go to counseling. That's valid, but if it's for my sake, there's a good chance I need to take some time to look at myself and try to figure out what's going on inside of me, that I'm losing my grace for that person, that I'm losing the patience to interact with that person. If it's for their sake, because you genuinely want them to improve their life, you want something better for them, you're worried about them, that could be a different thing. Your motivation is really for them. It's more altruistic that way, and it's a you. Just understand you may not have permission in their mind to speak to them about this issue. And that's really hard because they may just blow you off. Because in their mind, they haven't given you permission to say what you're going to say. Does that mean that you shouldn't say it? No, I would say you should say it. But just understand if they say, no, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say, it may be more because they haven't given you permission yet to speak in their life on that specific issue. And then lastly, the we. So if it's for our sake, because our relationship is suffering, we're struggling right now. If it's for our sake, you may have to ask yourself the premise question: what am I willing to pay by confronting someone with the idea of counseling or change, or something needs to change in our relationship? Because the cost might be high. And are you willing to pay that cost? That's something that you might want to do on the front end before you would confront. But I love what Heidi said as far as how you go about it, just being honest, truthful, and loving, and speaking directly to them.
We've had such a great response to spiritual first aid already, and I know you're excited about that. You mentioned it's just over a week away. Why are you passionate about that, and why would you say the why behind the what? Why are you excited about people signing up for that? Why are you too passionate about this course?
I'll go first. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. My why is probably because, well, I would imagine several of you could relate to my why, because my why has popped up over and over again throughout my life. My why was when I was a junior in high school, and my friend Matt told me his parents were going through a divorce. My why is when I was 21 years old, and my friend Brandon called me from the I-80 bridge too drunk to come home from the casinos. My why is when I was 25, and I got a phone call from Jordan, a teenager, calling his youth pastor, thinking about running away from home at midnight. My why was when I was 32, and my friend Nolan said his marriage was falling apart, and he didn't think he was going to stay married for the rest of the year. Or my why was when I was 36, and my friend Grant reached out to me and said, our baby has died in my wife's womb, and we have to give birth regardless. I find my whys to follow me throughout my entire life. And each time I get invited into those moments in my personal life, I wonder to myself, do I have the tools to respond how I would want to respond? So my reasons have followed me. And I'm very thankful that I've listened to those reasons, because it's inspired me and motivated me to get some more tools in those very precious moments. I would imagine you guys have very similar whys.
Yes, whys follow us around. Why do we do the things that we do? Why are we here today? Why are we seeking help? Why do we want to continue moving forward? And just as Joe said, all these stories surround us. They may look a little different, but we're all struggling with something, or the people around us are struggling with something. And so if you want to be more equipped with either handling the things that you're going through or help support the people around you, perfect opportunity.
Yeah. And what Heidi's saying as far as just being more equipped is really the key word here. If God trusts you enough in those deep moments of life, then he has already equipped you and he's already picked you to respond to that situation, and you are the right person for the job because of the relationship. You're already enough. What we're talking about is equipping yourself for the sake of having more confidence in those situations. I often tell my clients, competence cultivates confidence. So if you want to feel more confident in those deep situations, equip yourself with more tools. You're already the right person for the job. God's already picked that out for you. But equip yourself with the tools to respond in a better way. Not best, but just a better way. I think SFA can really be one of those tools.
Absolutely, and we've also got resources available on meadows.church that everyone can access as well. So if you need more things to access throughout the week, more tools throughout the week, feel free to check that out. Can we give it up for Joe and Heidi today? Thank you so much.
Once again, living out our purpose is not just about what we do, but it's about taking care of ourselves mentally so that we can be the best that we can possibly be to actually do what we've been called to do, right? I mean, I know that for myself, it's a struggle at times. It's a struggle to get past those mental hurdles of just trying to say, well, I'm okay because I have to be okay. And I don't have time to have any mental health issues right now, or I don't have time to be struggling in this way. Trust me, I'm in the same boat as every single one of you in that regard. We want to push through. We want to plow through. If you're a doer like me, you want to do your way through the mental health issue that you may be having, or that blockage that you may be having, or that funk that you're in, or maybe it's even more severe than that. And so I hope that conversation and that panel was encouraging to you. I hope that there's something that you could take from it. But if there's anything specific that you would like to hear discussed on the podcast, or maybe some insight into an area that you're looking for that we can unpack, or that we can invite a guest on to unpack, man, we would love to hear from you. So if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment on the YouTube page, or send me a message at sayer.bettinger@meadows.church. But I hope you're doing well. I hope you're excited about what you've been called to do. And again, if you ever have any questions about what it is that you've been called to do, we have episodes that we talk about that in the past and things that can help you determine what is my purpose. But ultimately, we know that a battery cannot put out what it does not have. You cannot lead from an empty cup. And so being mentally healthy is extremely critical to living out your purpose. We appreciate you so much for listening today. We'll catch you on the next episode of the show.